Listen to your heart, tell me who you wanna be. We can always start to believe. Listen to your heart, tell me that you understand. 'Cause you are the one for me. If you just believe, 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 Listen to your heart, 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 heart. Listen to your heart, 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 heart. Listen to your heart, tell me who you wanna be. We can always start to believe. Listen to your heart, tell me that you understand. 'Cause you are the one for me. If you just believe, if you just believe, if you just believe, if you just believe.
Yes, people, welcome back to another stream. That song always gets me feeling a bit better about myself.
I was
It's a proper heater, man. It's a proper tune. But listen, welcome back to another stream. I hope you're all doing very well. It is the afternoon after the night before. We are out of the Champions League. I have calmed down. I have the dust has settled. I've come to terms peacefully with the fact we are no longer in the Champions League. We're gonna have a good chat about it. Welcome everybody who's joining us. MJG, Jill, good to see you. P Dubs, Daniel, Nayballs. Hope you're all doing very well. Do us a massive favor. Smash the like button on the stream. All of your support massively helps. We got loads of great numbers on the watch along last night. You guys seem to enjoy it. We hope you can join us again on Saturday for the Chelsea game. And we have a guest to get some fresh thoughts. Myself and Joe were going horse last night, sharing our frustrations. We got Amos from the City Report podcast. I think it's your first time on this channel. We've definitely done work on City Extra.
Yeah, it's my first time in this house, Hugh, so it's nice to be here. Shoes off at the door. Are you a shoes off at the door guy?
Oh, yeah. Respect. You know what I mean? Respect.
Respect, yeah. Like walking around the badge. Respect.
Yeah, well, Real Madrid, they did show respect, didn't they? They walked around the badge and then they beat us on penalties. So,
Yeah,
you can take it whatever way you
terrorist
want.
football. So, yeah, some respect.
We're going to get into it all, people. We're going to get into it all. Make sure you get all your thoughts into the chat and hit that big like button. As I say, let's get straight into it. Before we went live, Amos, you said this doesn't come in the top 15 or 20 exits in the Champions League. I think I can kind of guess why. I think the fact that we've won it already kind of helps with the loss, because I think in the build up to winning the Champions League, it was getting more and more frustrating year in, year out. You're like, oh, now we have to wait another year for a crack at it. Now we have to wait another year for a crack at it. We won it, and then we play Real Madrid last night. 3-3 in the Bernabeu. We were there together last week, and last night it didn't turn out to be the kind of game I was expecting. For some reason, I was expecting goals, lots of goals. A semi underperforming City defense this season, I think it's fair to say, in comparison to the monumental performances they put in last season, and then just the attacking players on display last night. I was expecting big numbers, but it turned out to be the polar opposite.
Yeah, it was a little bit tame in the end, wasn't it? I think the numbers were there in terms of City creating chances. What did they end the game with? 33 shots, but just the one goal. Look, having won the Champions League, from a fan perspective, it's really difficult to get irate in the same way that Tottenham, Chelsea, Liverpool, Lyon, Real Madrid, those defeats in Pep Guardiola's era, Monaco as well. The most bonkers way City have been knocked out of the Champions League, you can think of it, bar penalties, obviously that's happened now, had already happened. City win it in Istanbul, they do it as part of a treble. It's always hard to sort of then get beyond that, and how do you comprehend it? But look, it was a cracking game. It wasn't necessarily the fireworks I thought that, likewise, you thought was going to happen. I think the only difference is, though, between the game in Madrid and the game in Manchester was a couple of worldies from outside the box. And I guess you could maybe say City should have tried that a little bit more. It worked last week. Lunin isn't their first choice goalkeeper. So I was a bit surprised we didn't see Foden, De Bruyne, even Rodri, maybe take a couple of those shots from the edge of the box. Wasn't to be, though, and I think we knew it, didn't we? As soon as it went past 120 minutes, it got to penalty shootout, then it was pretty inevitable, really.
We were picking our brains last night, trying to remember, have City ever had a Champions League penalty shootout?
No.
You might no. No, I
They've never
mean,
had. I'm pretty sure they've never had a European one. That might be wrong, but they've
we
definitely
had
never
it
had
in
a Champions League one.
Super Cup.
Super Cup, of course, yeah. But in terms of like the knockout competition,
No.
pretty sure that was the first.
Yeah, so to have your first against the most experienced of them all is probably not a good
Yeah.
omen. But I suppose Pep's selection for the game is falling under criticism. Myself and Joe were having back and forths about it. The chat, we're chiming in. Everybody kind of has different takes, and I think every take is kind of justified because now that we've lost, you can't really prove anything right. You can't really prove anything wrong. But he made some ballsy decisions. Pep, he opted to not play John Stones, whether that's through lack of fitness or through choice. We don't know. Akanji got the role. And then there was also the big one where Foden was put out in the right wing. Now, I want to start with the Foden on right wing one because it's the hot topic. It's the hot topic of the last couple of weeks. People are talking about the baton being passed over from De Bruyne to Foden, and that Foden should be in midfield. Me personally, it might be a hot take, and I'm always happy to get everybody else's. I felt last night was a great opportunity to play both De Bruyne and Foden in midfield. I thought in our place, the omen was on us to be the aggressors. Our two most creative players, I felt Foden was slightly nullified, not wasted, but you're not getting the full impact of Phil Foden out in the right wing. I mean, you were at the game, so you maybe assess things slightly better. Did you? What were your thoughts on that selection?
I didn't necessarily like it before, and on our show, we had this debate, and I posed the question: if you asked Pep Guardiola, if in some sort of alternate universe, if one of Phil Foden or Kevin De Bruyne would be out injured, would he have sort of maybe gone, okay, that's a little bit of a relief? And that sounds bonkers to say it because they are two world-class game-changing players, but exactly, it solves that problem, doesn't it? Because yes, they can play together, but Pep almost needs this confirmation bias of him sort of saying, well, no, actually, when they do play together, it doesn't work, so that's why I do this, and he does that, blah, blah, blah. I think it was a time to rip the Band-Aid off, though, to be honest here. I think it was one of those stages where we saw the night before, the Atleti versus Dortmund game and the PSG Barca game. You know, Champions League is madness, and mad stuff happens. We saw it in Madrid at the Bernabeu. Mad stuff happens. It felt like Pep went back to his old ways in a sense of trying to control everything. And that's not how City won the competition last year. They embraced that chaos. And I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but in the stadium, it was the bit that hurt me the most going away from that game was the first 10 minutes, because for some reason, whether it was an instruction, whether or not it was an off-the-cuff thing, City were intent on slowing the game down from that sort of first 10-minute period. I think Edison had the ball at his feet for about 40 seconds when it was in play. I genuinely thought he was taking a free kick. He was just stood there with it. No one was pressing him. Kyle Walker was doing a bit of time wasting and a throw in like 5 minutes in. And Real Madrid must have been thinking, oh my God, what are they doing? Because we saw last year, City blitzed them from the start. We saw even the year before when in the 4-3 game, City blitzed them. So it was a bit weird. The start to the game, and I think obviously when Rodrigo scores, City are just chasing it. And at that point, you're going to have to stick with Foden and De Bruyne on the pitch because those two are your guys. They're the creators. But I think, look, it's crazy to say it because he scored, but Kevin De Bruyne, I don't know if he should have started.
That was a big topic of conversation for us, Joe, wasn't it? Should Kevin De Bruyne start? I think we were kind of in agreement, and it's no disrespect to Kevin De Bruyne. The guy looked tired last night. He looked out in his feet by the 65th minute mark. I mean, hindsight's a beautiful thing, but you kind of touched on if one was injured or one wasn't available, would that solve his headache? It did solve his headache in the Bernabeu, didn't it? Because Kevin De Bruyne fell ill, so Phil Foden slotted in there. That might have given him some relief, but Joe, you weren't satisfied with Kevin De Bruyne last night. You weren't satisfied with the way we're doing things, and I fully take on board what Amos is saying. And I think I said it last night as well, probably in a more tempered manner. But I felt things were a bit robotic last night. It's like he over-calculated. He tried to over-control when we were missing that sting, that flair, that bit of creativity. I felt there were so many opportunities where we did invite Real Madrid out from their low block. I know they to give credit to Real Madrid, they held their defensive shape really well. They did what they had to do. They sang exactly from Arsenal's hymn sheet a number of weeks ago. But there were times where we did invite them out. We sucked them out. And then there was avenues to play a killer ball, to play a pass through, a ball over the top. You know, Haaland was starved because he wasn't getting those balls that he thrives off. You can't expect Haaland to do much when there's 11 men on the edge of the 18-yard box. Joe, you were kind of in the same boat as me last night, I think.
It's the same old, isn't it? Like, we've been here so many times before where we're exiting this competition again. I feel like we're exiting again because we've ditched what we do so well, which is fluidity and, you know, players being able to interchange with each other and play multiple positions. We spent days leading up to this Madrid game on live streams going, you know, this team on paper, you know, we did predicted 11 and everything. And, you know, the front five we got exactly right. But the one thing that we kept on saying was with Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden, all three of those players can play in all three of those positions, the two midfield slots and the wide right. All three of them can play in those roles, so they should be changing. But again, like Amos said 10 minutes in, you kind of felt like, what are we doing? It's static. There's no movement. It's slow. It's almost like we played like the away team until they scored. We played like we were away. It was too slow. And again, Foden, it took Foden about half an hour to get any solid, you know, real touches around the penalty area. Like, it just took far too long to get him involved. And again, there's no movement, no fluidity. Madrid were more than happy to sit there and sit in their two banks of five and soak up pressure. I said this. I said, if Madrid have done their own work, they'll play like Arsenal because they're a more dangerous team on the counter-attack than Arsenal are, in my opinion. So they'll probably get more joy from it. And they did get more joy from it. They went 1-0 up and they defended really, really well. You can throw the amount of shots, you know, the shot numbers at me, but, you know, bar a couple of sitters, I don't think there was any glaring, obvious, like, chances we missed. De Bruyne should have scored. I think Foden, when he kicked out, he probably should have done something with that. But, you know what, those three Haaland headers, very difficult chances. Potentially could have done better with the one that hit the bar. But I think, we're clutching at straws. He didn't have any real service. And again, I don't think it's rocket science. When you look at the recent performances, we've struggled to create loads of clear-cut chances, or, you know, a number of clear-cut chances when a team comes and play a low block. Arsenal, we struggled heavily. Madrid, we struggled a lot. I don't know what it takes to look at us struggling against a low block to try playing Phil Foden and Kevin De Bruyne in the middle. I really don't know what it takes, because if we're struggling to create chances, surely something must click in Pep's head going, I need to get an extra creator in the middle. I need another avenue in the middle to get something out of the game, because that's what I feel like now, where there is a game plan. There is a game plan. If you park the bus, you'll get joy. And for as much as people say it's anti-football, it's boring, this big old Real Madrid, how can they park the bus? Well, it worked, didn't it? They went through. How can you knock it?
Well, that's kind of the thing people are talking about right now. People are trying to, I don't know about sugarcoat, but they're definitely saying that we played all the football, which is true. We absolutely did. We dominated possession, but possession doesn't equal winning the game. I think us arguing that we played the best football, Madrid will argue the exact same thing. They'll argue the exact same thing. They came with a game plan. They fancied themselves in the counter-attack. They're happy to defend all night and allow us to play on the edge of their D. I mean, Amos, how do you assess that sort of debate people are having, that we were just unlucky or we played the best football and Madrid didn't come to play football? Because I've seen Madrid fans in my mentions on Twitter saying we did what we needed to do. We don't care about what style. Like, if we win the game, you go through. Don't care if it's a low block or a basketball game.
I think that's fair after the fact, isn't it? That we sit here and Real Madrid have gone through to semi-finals, City have been knocked out, and then you say that Real Madrid succeeded, because the truth is they did. My issue with that, though, is the two comparisons here are the Arsenal game in the Etihad a couple of weeks ago, where Arsenal restricted City to, what was it, one shot on target throughout the entire 90 minutes or something like that. I think they had I can't even remember how few shots they had. It wasn't a lot. The difference is City had 33 shots against Real Madrid, and in the end, it was a bit of scrappy finishing. Kevin De Bruyne blazing one over the top of the crossbar from, 6 yards out after he just found the back of the net. Phil Foden air shot in and scuffing a cutback, and a couple of penalties. And that, for me, is the difference, because if Real Madrid don't score those penalties and City do, and I don't buy necessarily that a penalty shootout's a lottery, but there is luck involved there. Mm-hmm. It's City who've had Guardiola's had the genius game plan. There'll be Real Madrid fans fuming because they've come to the Etihad and they've played like Luton Town. In fact, on Saturday, Luton Town were weirdly more expansive than Real Madrid. Look, it worked for them, so you say fair enough, they're through. We look like sour grapes because we're complaining about it, but I guess that's football, and that's knockout football, and that's why I maintain this line of thinking. The best team in Europe isn't necessarily the team who wins the Champions League, because if that's a league game across 38 games, it levels itself out. The best team in the league, and that's the case this year. If Arsenal win the league, they'll be the best team in the league. If City win it, they'll be the best team. If Liverpool win it, they'll be the best team. One game you get knocked out possibly isn't the best reflection of the best team in Europe. But look, it worked for them, so they'll be buzzing.
Absolutely. Like if they go on to win the Champions League playing in that fashion, they won't care. I mean, why would you care? It's a different strategy to league football, knockout football. You know what I mean? You come with a game plan for individual games. You don't come with a game plan for the season. Now they go on to play Bayern Munich in the next round. They'll probably have a totally different game plan, you know, for their games in the Bernabeu and the games in the Allianz there than what they did. The word came out from, I think, one of Real Madrid's news pages, I'm not sure which one, that Carlo Ancelotti did study that Arsenal game we had heavily and decided this is the way we're going to approach the Etihad games. We think we can get joy as well. But like if as you say, if we went to penalties and we scored those penalties and they didn't, we're all coming away from that saying that was a hard fought win. We grinded it out, you know, and so on and so forth. But because we didn't, you know, we can talk about the reverse. Big up Miro, the super chat. He says, I swear the way English media are hyping the Birmingham Dele Alli, Jude Bellingham, or Babyingham, the guy was on the floor more time than with the ball. This is another hot topic at the minute. Twitter's full of hot topics this morning. I don't know if you guys have
spicy.
been on it. It's messy.
Fernando's hot sauce. Not Saka hot sauce though.
Careful, you might trigger a few people in North London there. Bellingham. Rio Ferdinand said in commentary or punditry after the game, he is him. What a performance! I'm just going to put it out there. I was barely aware Bellingham was on the pitch for large parts of both ties. He did a lot of diving, he did a lot of play acting, but he will argue he did his job. He did what he needs to do. He slowed the game down when needed be. He was involved in Rodrigo's goal. They probably couldn't believe their luck early doors. I think their game plan for the whole thing was to keep the game the way it was for the most part. Slow it down, frustrate the life out of City, and then they couldn't believe their luck when they got that first goal. But I mean, Joe, Jude Bellingham across the two legs, did he show you any magic, any stardom? Were you impressed?
Well, he put an Oscar-worthy performance in over the two legs. I'm sorry, the fellow is shit. He did fuck all. He did nothing over the two legs apart from dive, roll around on the floor, shout at the ref, hold his face, whine. That's just the Madrid way. It's changed him as a player. I'm telling you. Like, the attitude stunk. Like, I don't understand how he's being bigged up. He had little impact. I thought he was begging for a yellow card and for a suspension in the first leg. Begging. Always in the referee's ear. Do you remember that one? I don't know if you remember this moment because there was loads of other moments, but I think it was in the first half where he's in a sort of shoulder-to-shoulder battle with Diaz. Diaz flings an arm back, hits him in the chest. He goes down, rolling around, holding his face, and the medical team come on. Get out of here, you diva. Get out of it. He did fuck all. I'm sorry, he did nothing. He didn't impress me. For someone who's bigged up as much as he is, I expected him to take control or at least have a moment. He didn't have a moment.
The contrast between the English media and the Spanish media in terms of Jude Bellingham's reception this season, I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's quite entertaining really, because in England obviously he's lauded, and I get it. I think he's a terrific player, even though we didn't see it over the two legs to huge amounts anyway, or a huge amount. But in England, where they're lauding him and they're saying he's this, that, the other, fair enough, work away. And in Spain, they're not happy with him. I think he's Real Madrid's second top goal scorer this season. You know, he's been crucial in their La Liga run and in Champions League as well. But they're actually not happy with. I've watched Real Madrid games live on TV where they're actually booing Jude Bellingham, and they can argue that they're not because we're Man City fans. We've just lost them, but they are. I mean, Amos, were you impressed by Jude Bellingham? You watched him live now the last 2 weeks in the flesh. What do you think of him?
I thought Bellingham was great at his post-match interview, but other than that, not really much to say. And I think that look, I want to preface this by saying the kid's young. He's 20 years old. He's playing for the biggest football club in world football. He's going to go on and win a La Liga title. He's probably going to go on and win a Champions League. And look, the kid's probably, for all intents and purposes, living the dream. But at the same time, what scares me, and I say this as an Englishman, I care for the England national team, but I don't necessarily. If England get beat, yeah, exactly. But he's at risk of torching his talent a little bit with the theatrics and the play acting and the rolling about and the being in the face of the referee, and look, it works to a degree, but you don't necessarily want to become one of those guys who is seen for being a bit of a moaner, because the one time he really showed his touch of class was that touch that led to the Real Madrid goal, because it felt like, and in the first leg as well, it felt like his first objective whenever the ball came near him or wherever he was involved was to try and cause a problem for somebody else, an opposition player, by the theatrics that we spoke about. You know, it was, like you say, it was the going down after the Diaz touch, it was sort of trying to time waste, it was bringing injuries into play, which obviously clearly weren't injuries, and you just don't want to see a talent like that wasted because they're trying to focus on stuff that is just look, it's poor attitude. And hopefully someone's having a word with him and saying, look, this isn't how you go about it. You go and be the best guy on the pitch. If you can't influence the game with your football skills, then you try and dig hard and you try and, you know, defend or whatever. But it just, it was a tough watch. It was a really tough watch, and like Joe says, he shouldn't have played. He should have been booked in Madrid, and the fact that some of the reactions on the back of it, look, TNT Sports have had a field day. I think Rio Ferdinand said something weird, like he's the sort of guy you want your daughter to bring home or something like that. And
yeah. I mean,
He's just a weirdo. He's just a weirdo.
I mean, yeah, it's not the kind of punditry that you expect from something you pay a subscription for. But nevertheless, big up Miro for the super chat. Let's get back to Manchester City and talk about some of the players. Another big one going into the game was Kyle Walker. Obviously, I don't think he'd played much football, if any, since the last international break. I think that showed for quite a large part of the game last night. I think he had a slightly better second half, but in the first half, I think he definitely looked off that bit of match sharpness. Pep took a leap of faith with Kyle Walker, didn't he? He said, "Look, this is a game where your specialist qualities can be useful for us." We can all talk about this. Amos, how did you assess Kyle Walker last night? And in hindsight, do you think it was the right decision to play him, considering, you know, we could have had, say, John Stones in the middle and him stepping into that role Akanji played, and had Akanji at right back, who I think has possibly been our best defender this season?
If I was doing the predicted 11, and look, we don't know, I don't think we know about John Stones' fitness. I haven't seen anything suggesting that he was, you know, unable to play from the start. He came on in extra time, and you're almost thinking if he's fit enough to play 10 minutes at the end of a game, he's fit enough to start at the start of the fixture and play through it. I don't know, but I wouldn't have picked Kyle Walker for his immediate return. I felt City could have possibly handled the threat that Real Madrid posed without him. However, I have no real qualms. Possibly could have done a little bit better with the goal, but I think we were just the whole defence was at sea for that one. That moment where I think there's two moments where he tracks Vinny Jr. and just completely nullifies him was cinema, really. And the one after, I think Vinny, whether or not he was injured, I don't know, but he got hooked after it, and it's good to see that he's still got that in him. I thought Kyle Walker was good, you know, borderline maybe even great, one of the better players for City, just because it was a tough ask for him. He was almost the last man for 90 odd minutes, considering City were chasing the game so much. And yeah, to play 120 minutes after you've been out injured for 3 weeks is pretty good. And 33 years old. Look, these are the games City wanted to keep him for. There's probably criticisms to be had elsewhere. I don't know if Kyle Walker falls into that.
Yeah, I think for the goal, he probably could fall into criticism for it, because
for sure.
Joe, we were critical of his reaction to the goal. His immediate reaction was to turn around to Akanji and start blaming Akanji when, like, Walker, you played them on the side. Do you know what I mean? You were a big contributor to Real Madrid scoring the goal. I think we were the same, Joe, last night, that we probably think Kyle Walker shouldn't have played. I was quite satisfied to play Akanji on right full back. I was very satisfied with how he did last week, and I've been very satisfied with how Akanji's done from a defensive standpoint all season. I think I can comfortably say I think he's been our best defender this season, our most consistent defender this season. So I'm not sure Kyle Walker was even needed, but I mean, hindsight's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? You can make all the arguments you want now.
I mean, if John Stones was sacrificed for Kyle Walker, it's an absolutely honking decision. Because it just didn't work, did it? Like, the first goal is massively on Kyle Walker. Plays everyone on side because he's dropped deeper, and then digs out Akanji for some reason. I don't even think Akanji did anything wrong in the goal. I don't think he had a part to play in the goal. So I don't know why he's digging him out, but he did redeem himself. I will give him a little bit of credit. He did redeem himself with the second half and the extra time. You know, I thought that was a help. In the first half, obviously very sloppy because he hasn't played football since, he went off injured for England. So that's understandable, but he shouldn't be playing if that's the case. But second half, injury time, he looked fresh going into the extra time because, again, he hasn't played football. So there's no, element of tiredness there. He could keep going. So that kind of played into his hands a little bit. He dealt with Vinicius, but yeah, I don't know. He arguably cost us a goal. I think as the captain, he should have been a penalty taker. I'm sorry, that's someone pointed it out on Twitter. I think, again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Who's to say that Bernardo Silva and Kovacic were going to miss? I thought Kovacic was going to miss as soon as he brought him on, personally. I said it. I said it when he was brought on. But I think, you look at Real Madrid's captain, Nacho. He's a centre-back. He still took a penalty because he's the captain. I would have put Kyle Walker's name down because even if he's not a good penalty taker, you want your leaders taking penalties. You want the players, your experienced players taking penalties. I think Kyle Walker should have stepped up, been a leader, been a captain.
The penalty selection order is definitely one that people are talking a lot about right now. The goalkeeper, obviously, a lot of people using the fact that the goalkeeper took a penalty ahead of Rodri and Kyle Walker as a stick to beat them with, but we don't actually know. You know what I mean? My guess is they talk about these things before the game. My guess is they talk about these things in training on the week building up to it, and they decide, should it go to penalties? This is the way we would like it to pan out. And Ederson has spoke a lot about for years now about how he has a massive interest in taking penalties, and you can't fault the guy. He took his penalty very well, but the Bernardo one is getting a lot of flack because of the way the keeper just stood still and caught it. But it's one of those ones that if it floats into the back of the net and the keeper does what 99% of keepers do in that situation and moves, we're all saying, wow, big balls Bernardo, what an absolutely class goal. The same way Benzema did to us 2 seasons ago. But if the keeper stands still and catches it like he did, Bernardo's made to look a little bit silly. But speaking of midfielders, actually another super chat here from Miro kind of on that topic. Big up Miro for the super chats, bro. He says, I don't blame Bernardo. The guy played 120 minutes, always gives his heart out. However, I do blame Kovacic. Fresh legs, just powered in the angle, for fuck's sake. I think Kovacic was brought on for the penalty, wasn't he? Which kind of looks
It's a shocking decision because he's not very good at putting the ball in the back of the net. He's an absolute howler.
I get both sides though. He's an experienced player. He's played at these, he's played in these big games before. He's played at the biggest stage before. So the thought process, I assume, is that he's going to be composed. He's not going to be, he's not going to shirk the occasion. It's not going to put him off. But at the same time, it never sits well with me bringing on a player for a penalty or bringing on someone for a penalty shootout. It always seems to end tits up. It always seems to end badly. And you see the tweets, they brought this guy on and he bottled a penalty shootout. But look, we can all focus on penalty shootout all we want, but the fact of the matter is there was 120 minutes of football played before the penalty shootout. You know what I mean? You go to a penalty shootout, it's a total lottery. There's no demand to win a penalty shootout. It's total luck. You have to talk about the football leading up to the penalties. I want to talk a bit about Rodri because he's another name that has been in a lot of conversations recently about fatigue. And I'm going to be honest, Amos, I think he is fatigued. I think he's really, really tired. Obviously, you were at both games. I was at the Bernabeu last week with you, and I watched him now across both legs, and I think he looks tired. He's giving away possession the way he wouldn't normally if he's fit and he's feeling fresh. He's moving slightly slower. His decision-making is slightly slower. His passes are everything's slightly slower. And I really don't put the fault on Rodri. I think it's easy to say, oh, he's just poor, or he's had a bad game. Could be the case, but I genuinely think he's being overplayed. I genuinely think he's struggling off the back of the fact that over the course of the last 2 seasons, he's played 120 odd games of football. You know, that's not healthy. It's not normal, and you can't expect him to turn up come April and May after 2 seasons of both domestic and international football, non-stop demands, non-stop, you need to run this game, the next game, the next game, the next game. It's tough for the guy, and I think it showed last night. And had Rodri been slightly fresher going into this game, it could have been totally different. Maybe he does take more long shots that you kind of spoke about that we didn't have. But I feel for Rodri, I really do, because he's such a competitor. We know how good he is, but he's being overworked, in my opinion.
Yeah, still unbeaten though, so that's the real win.
We take that.
Obviously, yeah, penalty defeats don't count as an L in that sense. Yeah, look, it's been how long have we had this conversation though? That's the problem, isn't it? Because I, as a person, love Calvin Phillips, but it didn't work. And then obviously the money City have spent on him. People love to say City have unlimited money, but that's 45 million pound or something like that. A failed transfer. Sometimes you can't do anything about that. You just have to sort of ride with it, and that's what City are doing now. Kovacic has come in. He's done well in certain matches to sort of alleviate that pressure, but we even saw against Luton. Every team that City play are going to be good. You're in the Premier League, you're a good team. You might not be as good as other teams, but you're still a good team. You can hurt teams. So that's why you need your main guy, and there's no one better than Rodri in the world. He was probably a level below his standard yesterday, but at the same time, he's still got 142 out of 156 passes, 91% pass accuracy, created 5 chances, touches in the opposition box 5. I think with Rodri, the issue is the standards he sets, because he's so important to City. If he has a decent game, that's just not good enough at times, because he has to have a world-class game. And he often does have world-class games. The issue is, though, in situations like that, it needed to be one of those performances like we saw against Bayern Munich at home last year, where he puts the team on the back and he gets it done for them. Frustrating, but I will say, we went back to the lineup conversation. He was essentially doing the job of 5 guys in midfield, because there's no one around him to set the tempo, so he was having to do that. There was obviously no one around him to sort of cut out counter-attacks, because everyone was pushing high because Real Madrid was so deep. He was also then having to try and create. So, I do feel like the fatigue plays into it, but the guy needs some help as well, because as good as he is, I don't know if it can all be on him.
We kind of speak about this a lot, me and Joe, and I want to get your take on it regarding helping Rodri and facilitating him to be able to perform at his peak every time he's called upon. Because we know he is so consistent. He really is. And he's totally allowed to be tired. He's totally allowed to be human and show flaws when, he's fatigued. It's I think we're victims of how good he is in the sense of that he gets relied on so much on the pitch. And then there's the off the pitch issue of how do you find a sufficient backup that can bring even close to Rodri levels of performance when Rodri isn't available? Obviously, you touched on Calvin Phillips, didn't quite work out. Kovacic is decent. Kovacic has he's come in and done what we expected Kovacic to do, but for me, he's not what we need moving forward. Can we, in the transfer market, find someone who's willing to come in and be another specialist number 6 and deputise to Rodri, both challenge him for position, because players have to back themselves, as well as give Rodri respite when he shouldn't have to be called upon? Because there was plenty of games over the last couple of months, Villas and Palace kind of games, where Rodri, ideally you don't want to play Rodri. I know he got a rest against Luton, but ideally you don't want to play Rodri. We don't have someone that you can trust fully to step into number 6. I've liked watching Kovacic, and I've also actually quite liked watching Núñez when he's dropped into deeper roles as well. But how do we pinpoint someone that can come in and do so? People have thrown in names like Palhinha and Kimmich as well, but he's not even a number 6. He's just a versatile player.
Look, he's irreplaceable, and Jesus, we're having this conversation now. Just imagine when it comes a day where he's either going to leave City or he's going to retire, because that's going to be a harder conversation than saying, how do we find someone who can deputise to him and take 10, 15 games off him a season? How do you find someone who's going to take 50 games off him a season? Because unless there's someone waiting in the ranks, I don't know. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a difficult task. There isn't a profile player out there, because I think since Sergio Busquets, Rodri's the first guy to reinvent that position, that holding midfield position, because he is. I think he's probably City's most important attacking player, more than anything. Yeah, you look at Haaland's goals, you look at Kevin De Bruyne, you look at Phil Foden. All of that happens because of Rodri and the rare times we've seen a City team without him this season in a match that matters. Look at that Arsenal game at the Emirates. Dear me, that was a tough watch. I'm not quite sure we even had a shot that wasn't from a set piece that day. So, Jesus, there'll be scouts, they'll be looking, they'll be trying to find someone, but as we've seen with Guardiola as well, if they're not at the standard, they're not coming in. There's no free tickets at this football club. Calvin Phillips found out the hard way, because decent player, I guess, but if he wasn't up to that standard, he wasn't playing, and he didn't play, and he got booted out.
That's it. We don't settle for Pep won't settle for just anybody. He'd rather have no one than play with someone that he doesn't
Exactly.
trust, and that's. It can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. It's up to you to decide. Listen, people, quick reminder, make sure you've hit the like button on the stream. All of your support massively helps. Let's get those likes up and subscribe if you're new around here. I will leave a link in the description after the stream for the City Report podcast where Amos operates every single day. So you can get more of Amos through that link. But yeah, hit the like button. Keep getting your thoughts in, people. I'm reading them as they're flying in. Another big topic off the back of last night is, of course, as he always is, Erling Haaland. Mixed opinions. A lot of people saying he doesn't impact the game enough. A lot of people saying he doesn't get involved enough. I feel for him. I really, really feel for Erling Haaland on nights like last night, because for me, Erling Haaland is a player who thrives on a little bit of chaos. A little bit of chaos. I don't think the robotic, side to side nonstop and unwillingness to try something different. You must stick to the side to side and wait for an avenue. I don't think it suits Erling Haaland, and he wasn't getting the service that he probably needed to thrive last night, Joe. It was difficult for him. It was difficult for him. I think people are being a bit too harsh on him as well, but I mean, 11 men in the 18-yard box is kind of hard to work with for a number 9.
I mean, yeah, I think it's like some of the criticism is unwarranted. Was he, like, anybody who watched that game, do you think he wasn't trying? Like, he was running about. He was trying to make himself useful. That's just not his strength. There becomes a point where we can't keep, and it's a similar thing with the whole Alvarez out of position thing. We can't keep saying he doesn't get involved enough. Give him the ball in the box then. Give him the ball in the box. Give him a chance to score. Get him involved then. If he's not involved enough, then it's on the rest of the team to get him involved. He's the guy up top. We brought him in because we didn't have this number 9. We complained for years about not having an elite marksman in front of goal. And now we're complaining because we've got one who is just an elite marksman in front of goal. You can't win. You can't win with this team. I swear to God, you can't win. So it's now at the stage where I feel for him, because teams are parking the bus and we're not creating a whole lot. Like, he got 3 headers yesterday. Is heading his strong point? No. Are you expecting him to drop deep and do Harry Kane stuff and get involved? No. That's not what we bought him for. We bought him to put the ball in the back of the net, but we're not getting him the ball to put in the back of the net, which then leads on to the whole Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne thing. We're struggling for creativity. We're not finding him. Amos said before with Rodri, he's having to do the job of 5 guys. Sometimes Rodri is the guy who's picking out Haaland more than anyone else, and that's our holding midfield player. That can't be on. He needs someone else to pick him out, and I don't know whether that falls on recruitment as well, because you look at Kovacic, he's not a guy to do that. Nunes, he's not a guy to do that. So maybe it falls a little bit on recruitment as well. But we're not picking him out. We're just not picking him out. He's trying. He's running about. He tracked back yesterday. He worked hard. He tried to hold the ball up and lay it off to his teammates, but he got no service.
What do you think, Amos?
I'll be honest, I think the criticism of Haaland in general is very misplaced, because these aren't his games where he's got 2 defenders, and I mean 2 defenders on him for, what did he play, 90 minutes? He's constantly at them, and in the stadium, my view, I was always constantly looking at Haaland and his movement and what he was doing. And there was a moment where he tried to pin himself to Nacho, because obviously Rudiger's the superior centre-back, but a lot of the time Rudiger would come over and they'd sort of tag team him when City are in attack. But even Nacho, this is at a goal kick for Edison. Haaland's trying to maybe make a yard, get him behind a little bit. Nacho's grabbing his shirt, he's pulling him, he's sort of like pinching his little legs and stuff. Well, they're not little legs, obviously, but he's pinching his legs. He was in a battle. And I don't think everyone gets different perspectives. You're in the ground, you see something, you're at home watching on TV, you see something people in the ground don't. But you don't necessarily see that side of his game or his battle when the TV camera cuts to replays, this, that, the other. So that was one thing I saw. And I see people sort of criticising him, saying he wasn't doing enough, he wasn't getting involved in duels, he wasn't battling. The guy would have left that pitch, and what was the quote that apparently he and Kevin De Bruyne asked Guardiola to come off the pitch at the end of 90 minutes, and I can see why, because the guy would have been knackered, completely knackered, and it wouldn't have been a lot of the things he was doing with the football. I actually think he sacrificed himself for the good of the team. And I think I said before, the deficiencies with Erling Haaland came from the people behind him. Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, Jack Grealish, they all should have done much better, to be honest, in terms of Bernardo Silva as well. He ran his legs off. He was absolutely everywhere, but in terms of when he got the ball, it was a little bit of a tough watch. I actually think Haaland, for what he was there to do, did well. It was up to the other guys, and unfortunately that wasn't necessarily the case.
I completely agree. And we said this last night. Like the whole thing with Haaland is, and people don't like this, is that if you're at the game, you'll get a better gauge of what Haaland's doing than when you're watching him on TV. Because when you're watching on TV, the camera's following the ball. You're not seeing what Haaland's doing. I saw it last week in the Bernabeu. You saw it last week in the Bernabeu. He was in a wrestling match for 90 minutes with Tchouaméni and Rudiger. He's doing his best to occupy the center halves and the fullbacks at times to try and create space, to try and create avenues for Foden's, for De Bruyne's, for whoever. Like last week, it was Vardiol, it was Foden, and Vardiol, Foden, and with the free kick, of course, as well. But we were getting more, there was a bit more of a gap between the midfield and the defense for those creative players to work, and it didn't happen last night. When you say there was more onus, I suppose, on those players to do more, I'm interested to see what you think they could have done more, because me and Joe spoke a lot about this last night. And for me, I keep saying this, it was just too robotic. It was too plan A. There was no plan B. There was no, moments of brilliance or magic, like a ball over the top or a reverse pass or a flick or something just to earn the Real Madrid's defenders respect, that we're not just going to be the exact same predictable, make them think that, oh, well, they have something else in their locker.
Yeah, precisely that. It felt like we were going back to 2018-19 in a sense, where City were only intent on scoring goals inside the 6-yard box. It's like they'd been given themselves a challenge or a task where they had to score within 6 yards of the goal, because any time, and look, there were 33 shots and quite a few of them came out of the goal, so I'm being a bit sort of pedantic there, but any time City got anywhere close to the goal with a little bit of space, catching Real Madrid out, there was always an extra touch. There was always a cutback. There was always a pass. It never felt like... Do you remember the goal? Was it Kevin De Bruyne against Arsenal last year, where Haaland held it up at the halfway line and he slipped Kevin De Bruyne in? Yeah, and bang, shot. There was none of that. It felt like City were always trying to take that extra touch, and I don't know if it was because the Real Madrid defence was so deep. I just found it weird, though, the way that City scored their goals last week, which were all free outside of the box. And you can't rely on that. But against teams that sit so deep, you're never, ever, ever going to walk it into the box unless you get a lucky rebound, which was the case for the Kevin De Bruyne one. It just felt like City had regressed a little bit in that sense, and they hadn't necessarily learned what they were doing last year. They just completely sort of went back on it. It was a bit bizarre, their attacking play. I guess that's been the case this season, though, entirely. Apart from United, I don't think City have won a big game at home, which is concerning.
Yeah, it's really concerning. And the fact that we're 6 games off winning 4 in a row, totally in our hands, and we haven't. Our Big Six record's pretty crap, and our home record against big teams in general is pretty crap. It's quite unbelievable. But I think your point's absolutely accurate, that we're trying to walk the ball into the net. I mean, look, the fact that Real Madrid were so deep, for me, that was an opportunity to just rain long shots, Rodri long shots, De Bruyne long shots, because you're going to invite them out. You're going to invite them to try and prevent these long shots and put more pressure on the players in possession. But the players in possession weren't earning the respect of the Real Madrid defenders to step out. They were happy, as I said last night, crab defense, side to side, because City were just going side to side. It felt like we were trying to find that Bernardo goal of one of the Bernardo goals of the home leg last season, where you get to the byline, you pull it back, Bernardo heads it in, and it's a great goal.
And the issue with that, there's a big miss from that lineup, and it's Ilkay Gundogan, because he was the guy who in and around the box, he was the guy who could pick those passes. He could unlock a defence from 11 men inside the 18-yard box, and he'd pick out a City player. Phil Foden, wonderful. Kevin De Bruyne, wonderful. They're not that type of player, which I think he was probably the biggest miss for City.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the season overall, Joe, people are talking about this a lot, about the players that we let go. I mean, I looked at Mahrez's stats the other day. His last 3 or 4 seasons, he was averaging 25 to 30 GNA a season. that's so hard to replace. Ilkay Gundogan, he obviously had loads of GNA, but also his overall play was so influential and so huge for us in big games and big moments. I don't know about you, either of you, but I feel if we had Riyad Mahrez and Ilkay Gundogan on that pitch last night, we win the game. I think we win the game. Both of them are match winners. Both of them have those moments of brilliance in them where they can change the game, add something different in an instant. But yeah, the attack and play overall last night for me, Joe, it was just too predictable. And it kind of interlinks with the Haaland thing. What can Haaland do? What can Haaland do when a defense is totally comfortable with the way you're attacking them?
What, 5, 6, 7 players in the box? You know, 2 or 3 of them marking Haaland because we refused to take long shots. I mean, do you remember us saying on stream, they completely left, whenever we got on the edge of the 18-yard box, Madrid completely left Manuel Akanji on his own because they weren't scared of him. He was stood in so much space. Grealish should get the ball, get doubled up. Who was a spare man, Akanji? He had no one within 10 yards of him because Madrid were like, we can let him have the ball. He's not going to shoot. He's not going to score. He's not going to pick a pass. You know, he shouldn't be in that position. If that was John Stones is capable of a long-range goal. Dortmund, Champions League group stage last season, he did it there. Like, he would have earned the respect of Real Madrid. He's a much more dangerous player. Probably would have tried a long shot. Manuel Akanji tried a long shot. I went near the corner flag. Like, that's just the state of it was, where if you want to open up space in the box, if you want to try and pass it into the goal like we used to do, you need to create space in the box to be able to do so. And the best way to do that is to have long shots. You have a couple of long shots that go close, they're going to have to, you know, close out the space, which then opens up the defence, and it opens up, you know, balls over the top, opens up, you know, those little reverse passes to the byline for cutbacks, those sorts of things. You can't pass the ball into the back of the net when, like you said, they're just playing a crab defence, side to side, basically blocking the goal line, blocking the box, and going, they dared us to shoot and we didn't take it. They dared us to pop shots, and we just decided, no, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep probing, we're going to keep trying to pass it into the goal. And again, like Amos said, we got the one lucky one. De Bruyne missed the second one. But it was clear it wasn't working. It took us, 75 minutes? 76? I don't know what minute De Bruyne scored, but it took us until then to actually, you know, have a chance to pass the ball into the back of the net.
Well, that's that. Listen, guys, make sure you've hit the like button. Over 100 in the building. Subscribe if you're new around here. All of your support's been absolutely fantastic. Champions League comes to an end, but the season has not come to an end. There's still absolutely plenty to fight for. I don't know what you thought at the start of the season, Amos, but my thought process was absolutely prioritize 4 in a row. And if you told me 3 weeks ago that with 6 games to go, we'll have it totally in our hands, I'd have said wishful thinking, because Liverpool and Arsenal were both looking pretty inevitable. Still plenty to fight for, and this 4 in a row, I really hope, and I think the players and the coaching team have to make a really massive effort to not allow last night to derail us. We have a job to do on Saturday against Chelsea in the FA Cup. There's still a double. Do you know what I mean? Not win the Champions League back to back is no embarrassment, but 4 in a row, do some history. It's there for us, man.
Yeah, and I think going back to the first comments we made, losing to Real Madrid in the Champions League is not a failure. It's the luck of the draw. Look, these two, if they were put on opposite sides of the draws, these two teams would have been in the final. It's just a matter of the fact that they were drawn against each other in the quarterfinal. Probably the best 2 teams in the competition. I know Arsenal have a word to say about that, and I think Arsenal will be there in the next year or 2, but they had to sort of learn the ropes a little bit and learn how to. It sounds weird, but in the Champions League, you need to learn how to get beat before you can go on and win it. City know that. So losing to Real Madrid isn't a failure. Like you said, though, it's important that doesn't derail them in these next 6 Premier League games. I would be majorly surprised if City got anything against Chelsea, just because we're already 48 hours away from kickoff at Wembley, and we're still sort of reviewing the Real Madrid game. Why that's the Saturday fixture, I have no idea. But it's probably going to be a rotated team against Chelsea. They'll fancy themselves. That's their last chance of silverware. For me, it is those 6 Premier League games, those 6 finals. Brighton, Nottingham Forest, Wolves, Spurs, West Ham, Fulham away, yeah. So, yeah, the games that I think if you put in front of City, they'd take, but there's plenty of banana skins in there as well. Plenty of time to go. Should be good, but start of the season, you take this position, 100%.
I don't know who's
Absolutely.
taking Spurs away. I don't know who at City's taking
That's the
Spurs
point.
away.
That's the point. That is a good point. 5 games, 1 automatic loss, but we'll see.
I weirdly think we can afford to drop a point or two in these 6
Yeah.
games. I really believe both Arsenal and Liverpool will drop more points. But we'll have to see
The
how
next
it
week
pans
is
out.
interesting because they both play 2 away games before City play next in the Premier League. So if Arsenal, for example, win 2 out of 2, I think they go 4 points clear. If they drop a point or 2, City have a chance to extend that lead even further. So it'll be when City play Brighton. I think it's next week. That'll be interesting to see where the sort of the lay of the land lies in terms of that, in terms of the Premier League title race.
I think Liverpool have like 3 away games in a row.
Yeah.
I don't see them getting 3 wins. Just respectfully, I don't see them getting 3 wins. But yeah, man, it's there for us. It's there for us. Listen, that's kind of it for the Real Madrid debrief. The Champions League comes to an end for us this season, but as we've agreed, all is not lost. Plenty to look forward to, plenty of games. Amos, massively appreciate you coming on. Didn't want to keep it too long. I know you have to shoot off. Guys, there will be a link in the description for Amos's podcast, City Report podcast. All the City fans, I do suggest and advise you go and check him out. It's a fantastic team he has going on over there. We'll definitely get you on again soon, maybe after the Chelsea game. Are you going down to Wembley on Saturday?
Working on the grind, unfortunately. So no, hopefully for the final though, if we make it.
Oh yeah, we'll all be there for the final if we make it. Hopefully, Manchester Derby final. We'll have to see. Yeah, listen, big up everybody who's tuned in. Still over 100 people here. Smash the like button. Leave all your thoughts down below in the comments if you're watching on playback. But all we ask you to do is hit the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. No more streams tonight because I've got Big 6 and there's Europa League football on. But myself and Joe will be back tomorrow, building up towards the Chelsea game, and then of course back for a watch along for Chelsea on Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your day, people. Goodbye.